melt this when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Catholic University soccer coach Travis Beauchamp, whose team recently qualified for the Sweet 16 in the NCAA Division III with a thrilling overtime victory over probably a rival, Christopher Newport, at least a rival for players. Congratulations, coach, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks. No, thanks for having me. Yeah, a pretty exciting weekend we had down there in Newport News.
I can imagine they didn't want to let you leave. You probably need a police escort to get out of there.
No, I mean, look, it's great to beat the host, and obviously, they just do things, in such a high caliber, the way they hosted and their team and the program. So for us to win, I mean, just to be here in the Sweet 16 is something we've never done before, but to do it in that fashion was really awesome.
This is why you coach. This is why you do it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I know you're from around that area. We're going to get back to that. Quickly go through your record. This is I think this is your 7th NCAA tournament. You've won 5 landmark conference championships in a row, which is the most in conference history, I guess Catholic is. So just a great record, coach. I know you're from the Northern Neck area of Virginia. And I wouldn't think at that time was soccer a hotbed, but tell us a little bit about how you got interested in soccer and about your hometown and your home area.
Sure. Wow, that's great. Anytime Northern Neck can be on the map, it's fantastic to hear. I actually started probably, we lived down in New Orleans, and I was playing down there. My family is from the Northern Neck, so I moved up there. So I'd already had kind of a foundation. When I got up there, my father was an English professor, and he knew that I wanted to continue to play. So he put a little team together, and I was able to play. And then I went off to Christchurch, which is Christchurch School. It's down a boarding school down on the Rappahannock River, who coincidentally just won the state championship in soccer on Monday night. So
is that right?
Yeah.
They've had some great basketball teams too.
Yeah, that's right. And Coach Schaefer's done a great job down there. But anyway, so I was able to play there, and then I went on to Washington College, and I was fortunate enough to continue to play, and I played 2 sports there. And this was back in the 90s when you were able to do that, or it was a little more prevalent for folks to play more than one sport. And so that's a little bit about the sort of the background. I think for me, it was just, can I play? Can I play? Can I play? There was never this like, oh, well, I want to do this. It was just, I love to play, so I wanted to keep doing it. And so I was afforded that opportunity, which was great.
So I've been talking to some of the Division III coaches in this tournament. It's been great because a lot of the local teams have qualified, and there are kids from the country in Virginia that are on some of these rosters. Are kids getting exposure now from rural areas? Like, when I was playing soccer, I was more of a basketball player. My sister was a soccer player, but all the kids came from Northern Virginia, DC area. I know Richmond came on in the 90s or whatever. But are kids from the country? Are they getting exposure?
They have to do a little bit more, I think, still, but they are able to, just because I think this, there are different platforms for them. They can send out video. That certainly helps. And then, if they have the financial means to be able to go to these camps and things to put themselves in front of coaches. And then the other thing is, there are more clubs. So clubs are more prevalent. And so it's not unheard of nowadays for kids from the Northern Neck to maybe go to Newport News or Richmond 2-3 days a week. So they're training and they're playing and they're getting exposure that way. So I would say, I think it's still difficult and certainly not as easy as somebody that maybe lives in Arlington. But you are seeing a little bit more of that.
Yeah, well, that's great, because I'm sure there's great athletes out there, and for generations they've played football and basketball and baseball.
That's right.
And why not soccer? Well, Coach, you're being a little modest about your background. You were a Hall of Fame in both soccer and baseball. Now, up here, it's unheard of because they play in the same season in Northern Virginia. But the fact that you were Hall of Fame in 2 different sports and 2 radically different sports, you must have been a tremendous athlete.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it was. I'm honored to play with folks, and I guess I am a little bit modest, but when I got a chance to get into the Washington College Hall of Fame, and I think that was in 2015. Longtime head coach Al Streelman was there, who played for a legendary coach, Coach Ed Athey, who actually recruited me to Washington College, and so that was a real honor for me. And then a couple years after that, I was fortunate enough to get into the Christchurch Hall of Fame, and both places I hold, as you can imagine, very, very dear to me. So yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to talk about yourself, especially as a player 20 years ago. But I guess, yeah, I had some moments. So that.
Yeah, that's great. When's the last time you've had a player on your soccer team that played baseball in the spring, or any other, maybe ran track? Does it happen often at Catholic?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. When I first arrived here, we had a player who did both soccer and baseball in 2007. And we've had a couple of players. One did tennis, and I think we've had a track athlete, but it's just so rare nowadays to be able to do it, just because the demands on your time starting well before the college experience happens. And so we're almost telling these players they have to specialize really early on in their athletic careers, which, I mean, that's for another discussion, but still, I think, it's tough when you have somebody who's pretty well rounded as an athlete to say, well, you're going to have to do this, or the train's going to roll by you. So now it's even more special to be able to do that.
My guess is, well, we're going to agree that it's too bad there's so much pressure to specialize, and it's too bad kids can't do multiple things. But again, that could be another discussion. Yeah. So how did you get into coaching, and when did you decide you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah. So I went into, I was fortunate enough to stay on as a graduate assistant at Washington College. So immediately after I graduated, I actually coached for my both the soccer and baseball coaches. So I sort of did both, and I'll be honest, it's not a very fruitful existence. And so I thought, well, gosh, I need to do something here with my degree. And so I went into teaching. It was sort of a natural progression for me, and I went away to a boarding school up in Maine, and because I had gone to a boarding school and it seemed like a good fit. I really enjoyed it. But after a couple of years, I just got the itch, and I found myself going to small college games up in New England. And so I really thought about, I want to get back into the collegiate coaching. And so I dipped my toe in the water. I put out some resumes, and I was fortunate enough to get an offer from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, Long Island, New York. And so my then girlfriend and I had a long time, now my wife, but had a long conversation about the commitment that it would take as a family to be able to do that, and decided that was something that we really wanted to go for. And so Mike Smollins, who was the head coach at Merchant Marine, offered me that position, which was just a really another, it was a fortunate thing for me. And once I got there at Merchant Marine, I hit the ground running. I really loved what I did, and so I haven't looked back, and it's been great. It's been such an unbelievable career to have. And I think the biggest thing for me was deciding if I wanted to do soccer or baseball, because even at the boarding school, I was coaching both, and I enjoyed both a lot. So I think I was always probably a little bit better at soccer, but I liked baseball more. And so I kind of veered in that direction.
What's interesting is baseball and soccer are more alike than we think, because they're both percentage games. You got to play the percentages over a long period of time, and both games can be very cruel in the short term. And I've always felt that they're very similar, but they don't seem similar. As a matter of fact, they seem like the direct opposite, because the body types are different for the sport.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think so. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, where you can get a great pitcher and with that at a not so very good team, and they can win the game. Yeah. And for us, and I think maybe some of the goal sports, but you can outshoot a team 24-1 and lose the game. And so that's the cruelty that you're referencing there. But and the percentages too. So I do think there's some similarities between the sports for sure.
Yeah. Well, how'd you get your first head job?
So we Merchant Marine Academy was forming a new conference, the Landmark Conference, with the folks at Catholic, and the athletic director at the Merchant Marine Academy, Sue Peterson-Lebeau, had said, "Hey, this job is coming up. We're from, as you referenced earlier, both my wife and I are from the Northern Neck, and so as soon as the job came up, I thought, oh, man, this would be fantastic." And it was part time at that time, so it was sort of a leap of faith for us. And Dr. Mike Allen, who was here as the athletic director, I had a chance to come down and meet with him, and then was just thrilled to get the opportunity. And to be completely honest, when I took the job at Catholic, the thought process was, I'll do 3 years here, I'll get it going in the right direction, and then I'll go get a better job. And it turned out that this was a better job. And so, again, just fortunate to have been able to be here for this long now, my 16th year, which is unbelievable to think about. But it's been a good spot for us.
Well, it's unbelievable, but it's not rare. Like I said, I've talked to probably 10, 15 soccer coaches this year. It's amazing how long they've all been there. I mean, I just talked to Coach Nolan at Georgetown last week. I mean, the coaches that stay in these jobs, it must be a great job because they stay a long time.
Yeah, and there's also good fortune in the longevity in terms of it's relationship building. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is sales to a certain degree. And the more of that you're able to establish, the better off you are and the better off the program is. And so we're able to do things now, 16 years later, that in year 3 or 4, there was never going to happen. And so, you have somebody who has a good experience, and their club coach has a player who doesn't have a home, and, oh yeah, well, Catholics may be a good option. And so the more that you're at a place, the more helpful it is. And so, I don't think it's a coincidence that we've sort of gotten to where we are now, because we've been able to lay those inroads over so many years. And so, that is one of the things that's helpful with these schools. And of course, the school that you're at, the university offers so many good opportunities. We're right in the middle of the city, and we have all these wonderful majors that now all of a sudden you can go in and tell families, that you have their kid's best interest, and you're actually being truthful in that. Your kid wants to be a nurse. Well, hey, we've got a great nursing program, or engineer, or architecture, whatever it is. And so you're not trying to sell a bill of goods. And I think that really helps you move the program along. And so those guys, Kilby's a good friend of mine, and I know he's done the same thing down at Mary Washington by being over there for more than a decade now.
Yeah, it's also, I'm a Arlington native, actually Fairfax native. It is amazing how that part of town has changed. Even before you got there, it's kind of a nice part of town. Catholic University used to be in a really tough part of town when I was growing up, and it's amazing how that area has redeveloped.
We hear that all the time from folks, who may have gone to school in the 80s, or my aunt went here in the 80s, and she said, boy, watch out when you're around campus. And that's the first thing I said. Well, you probably need to come and visit, because things have changed a little bit.
they changed a lot. You just had to walk in the middle of the street, that part of town at nighttime. You would not go towards
That's
the
right.
sidewalk. But so look, when you first got the head job, how did you decide how you wanted to coach? And how did your team play?
So when I first got it, I'd come from the Merchant marine academy, a very blue collar, high work rate, and I wanted to bring that. That was sort of all I had known. And so, that's the way we were going to do things. And you recruit really hard, and try to get the right players and the mindset. And a lot of that has sort of stayed true through the years, but it's also changed a little bit as it moved on. When you get somewhere, I wanted to win right away. And so I was, early 30s, and yeah, this is it. This is got more go time. And we were fortunate enough to do that. But to have longevity in it, there were some corners that are probably cut that I would never do now. And so, character counts, the type of families that you bring into your program. It's just like a business. You have to make sure that everyone's on board with the vision that you have, and you take time and are very intentional about developing those relationships, which earlier on in my career, I don't know that I was, to be perfectly honest. I looked at players more as what can they do for us as opposed to, hey, you know what can we do for them, and how is this going to work together for a lasting relationship further on? And I think I was probably a little naive in that, but it worked out at the beginning. And then just like anything else, as you start to fail, it opens up your eyes to things that you can do better. And I think that the way we do things has changed a little bit throughout the years, but we still want to get the right people and good players, obviously, but we can be a little bit more selective in that process. And then with regard to the play, it changes. And in my mind, it kind of has to change, because we're a Division III soccer program. And so if we could go out and get every player that we wanted to get, then it wouldn't change. But that just doesn't happen. And so, we may have different players or different players with different attributes, and we have to fit them into kind of what we're doing. But just as much as we have to sort of bend a little bit with what we're trying to do, because we don't have the time to bring a player in and say, all right, we want you to be something that you're not, because then we're not going to get the most out of them. And so I think that's one of the things where maybe as young and bravado and, hey, this is how we're going to do things has changed, because now I'll see a player and say, well, there's something we can get from him that maybe is a little bit different than another player, and let's use that to our advantage, as opposed to trying to change that player. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's how we've changed over the years, I think.
Does make sense. College soccer gets a bad rap sometimes for being overly practical. Coaches have to win. How important is it to you to play attractive soccer?
It's important. It's important, but I think it's also realistic in what we're trying to do. I've always said that the best teams that we've had here are able to do two things. They're able to play when they need to, and they're able to handle not play when they have to, if that makes sense. So if somebody comes out and just, roughs us up and knocks us around, are we able to respond to that? And if it is a good soccer game and we're knocking the ball around and we're able to find entry passes and players are working off and things like that, we can handle that too. And the best teams that we've had here have been able to do that. And sometimes we veer a little bit one side or the other. And, those teams, I think, maybe don't find as much success. And I agree. I think soccer does get a bad rap on the college side, but I also caution, because it's not a one size fits all. And it's not, well, Division III, or if you go look at Division I soccer, some of those teams are doing the same thing that's happening at Division III in terms of, all right, well, how do they want to play and how do they want to approach it? And sometimes you can see them coming off the bus and say, okay, well, I know what kind of team this is going to be. But it works for them. And that's what I always tell recruits when we go and do these things. Say, well, go and see what they want to do. And if that fits for what you want to do. And because that's an important piece. If they want to play direct and pick up second balls and they're very good at it, that's great if you want to go play that way. So I think everyone kind of approaches it a little bit different. And I think that's all right. Because soccer ultimately is a game of tempo, and whoever controls it the most during the 90 minutes usually will be able to win.
Exactly. Well, you touched on recruiting earlier. How exactly do you get your players? Now, you're in a soccer hotbed. You don't have to leave DC if you don't want to, but you probably have a lot of private school kids, Catholic school kids would be interested in your program and your the kind of team that you've built there. So how do you get your kids?
Boy, it's I tell you, there's every kid on the team, and I would venture to say almost every kid playing a sport in college has a unique path. And so we'll go out to tournaments, we'll bring players in, we'll go to high school games. It really, any time there's an opportunity for us to maybe see a player, we'll go out and see them. And that's where I have to be honest, your assistant is really important, because it's tougher now. I have young children at home and there are a lot of demands on time. it's easier for me now to go and sit down at a tournament for 2 days and have a list of players that I need to make sure I know than going out to all these things that I mentioned earlier. So if you have young and hungry folks that are in your organization that say, hey, I'm going to go. And I mean, we're going up to New Jersey on Friday to do our walkthrough practice. And our assistant said, well, there's this tournament in Philadelphia. Can I pop over and watch some games? And that's how you ultimately get better, to be able to go and sit down and see them. But we work at camps during the summer, and some of our kids have come from camps. And we are a national university, so it is one of those things for us where if we put our energy into a certain region, usually we're able to gain some traction there. But you're right in that if we have a student athlete from Rhode Island, because we have student athletes from Rhode Island and Baltimore, the chances of us knowing the Baltimore student obviously are much higher, because we can pop out to a game at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whereas Rhode Island, we have to be really intentional about going up there. And so the local piece has become really important for us. And the other thing, and this is probably the biggest piece for me, is what I mentioned earlier, which is it took us about 10 years to get into Baltimore. There's just something about Baltimore, DC. And, but once we had a student or two that had a good experience, the door opened and it became more of a reputable program. And now all of a sudden we're making some inroads in Baltimore, and we're getting some tremendous players from that area. So the DMV has just been great for us. And the more opportunity we have to talk about Catholic University soccer, the better off it's going to be for the program ultimately.
You worry a lot about kids that you're spending time with will end up being Division I, and because when you're a top Division III program, there's not a whole lot of difference sometimes between the quality of player, Division III and Division I. Maybe the athleticism is not quite there, but these are things that you're not going to find out sometimes until the very end. So is it delicate sometimes figuring whether we should spend our time with this guy? He might end up at Maryland or Howard or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is I mean, you have to do it, right? But there is something that we lost a player last week to a Power 5, and all along we thought to ourselves, and I think we're probably punching above our weight here, but at no point did we say, well, let's stop, because there's a chance. I will say that one of the things that we talk about nowadays with the transfer portal and the prevalence of that is we've had one player in 16 years transfer out of Catholic men's soccer to go play somewhere else. And I think that's a testament to our families and the culture. And so we tell people that when they come, and that's not to negatively recruit somewhere else. But, there's 2,000 people in the transfer portal. So it's becoming this free agency. And I would never tell a player not to take a shot at their dream, if their dream is to play at the highest level. But the reality of it is, if they're in talks with us and a big time Division I should probably tell them. So at the end of the day, if they're saying, well, I'm looking at Maryland, you shouldn't come to Catholic. I mean, if they want to go and play professionally, I mean, our players are going to go be professional engineers and architects and business people, and but they don't also want to have their athletic careers take a backseat. So they want to play at a really high level too. And so that's what we tell them when we're going through the recruiting process. And then we try to lay that out so that they can ultimately make that decision. But there's so many outliers. I mean, I was telling you earlier, I have children now of my own, and it's, I guess it shouldn't be, because there's so many topics that I don't know about. But when parents talk to me about the recruiting process and things, it's astounding how little they know about that process. And so there's this, well, there's going Division I, and to your point, I mean, a lot of, I would say, the best teams in Division III, they're filled with Division I players. That's just how it works. And so, so we talk about fit, because I think fit is such an important piece of it.
My son was a 22 graduate at Yorktown High School. They had a very good team. and he's down at UVA now. He's not playing soccer, but when I walk around there, there's Nate Woods, who was Johns Hopkins, was really looking at him. There's Luke Newell, who was a center back on their team that could have gone anywhere. There, Ryan Popovich, who played at Oakton, big rival. All these kids walking around campus who are not playing soccer, who are tremendous soccer players, definitely could have played D3. A lot of them are borderline. Do you lose a lot of kids at the last moment who decide not to play soccer at all?
Yeah, that's happened. That that happened 2 weeks ago. So there's a player that we've been recruiting for 14, 15 months.
Wow.
And we had offered him back in August and hadn't been hearing much, and he's having a tremendous senior year. And we finally sort of got to the point where he said, I think I may want to go to Georgia or somewhere. And I said, well, you don't want to play? Said, I don't know that I do. And so that happens more now. And I don't know. My wife and I were talking about why is that happening. I'm not sure. But you're right. I think especially at these bigger state schools, there are some players that you kind of scratch your head from our level, because I'm thinking to myself, well, that's an all conference and potentially all regional type of player. But hopefully it's a good fit for them, and they're happy with whatever decision that it is they make. So
yeah, I'm sure they miss it, but I guess. Well, anyway, Coach, I want to get to your team, but let's talk a little bit about the Landmark Conference. I don't know much about it. How does the soccer compare to the ODAC? And I forgot what Marymount is in the Coast to Coast for.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Landmark Conference I think it's a good soccer conference. Certainly we're not up with, the NESCAC or the Centennial has, pound for pound, they're going to be better soccer schools. We're right in the middle of that. In Region 5, we're with the Centennial. We're probably a little step up from there. I hate to put people in that box, but overall we would win a lot of those games comparable to the ODAC. And so I think the one thing about the Landmark, which is interesting, is that I've been a Catholic for 5 years. I mean, for 16 years, sorry. And I'm the 5th longest tenured in that conference. And so the coaches in the conference have been around for a really long time. And so there are 8 teams, but we're expanding the conference next year to 10 teams. So that will be interesting to see how that changes things. But yeah, and we're the furthest south. And so it's from us all the way up to Drew University, which is out of New Jersey. And I guess Scranton maybe geographically is more northern than them. But so and then of course, when I got here, it was the first year of the Landmark Conference. So it's been 16 years. And but yeah, I think overall a competitive group. We got 2 teams into the tournament this year. Usually we're a 1 to 2 bid conference. So that's probably the best way to describe us from a soccer standpoint.
A little bit about your team. Well, one thing I looked right away is you got some goal scorers. You have Goldie. These names are hard to pronounce. Gordy Benlor, Dominic Tata Bianco, and then a kid who came off the bench, your leading scorer, came off the bench to score the winning goal in overtime. Darius Saipush. So you got some goal scoring in there. It looks like a pretty balanced team. So how would you describe your team?
It's a really fun group. This is just we are dangerous in the attack, and that's been fun to watch. Sia Push is our leading scorer, and Gordy is right behind him. But I think you're right. We've got good goalkeeping. Our defending has come along throughout the season, and so now we do have that working like sort of mentality, and we repressure, and I think we do that really well. The thing that I was really impressed with this past weekend is that I think to gain some traction in the tournament, you have to be deep, and we did such a good job coming off the bench this weekend. That it just reminded me that, just like any program, we have sort of our ups and downs as the season goes on, but our players are bought in, and they work really hard, and I think it's paying off them. We've got good leadership, so all those sort of intangible things that you look to we have it this year. And I always say that when we have the best years that we've had are the years that I've actually coached the least, because they're player led. And this year is one of those where, the players have just done a tremendous job of making decisions and competing and knowing when to turn things on and things like that. So there's just not enough good things I could say about the group. They're just a lot of fun to be around, and they compete. Oh my goodness, and that's the other thing. So they love each other, but they'll also, they'll take your legs off in training, and so that I think is also a special part of the group.
Well, you had a 2-game set this weekend, which is the way it's done in Division III. You had to beat a team called Rosemont. I think they're from.
Oh no, we beat Lynchburg.
Oh, you beat Lynchburg. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they got some local kids. They got some lots
Yeah.
of local kids I know on that team as well. I didn't
Right.
realize you beat them. Did you handle the game like a 2-game set? Did you substitute like you were going to have to play 2? Because if you go all in on the first game, you may have nothing left the second day.
Yeah, no. We went all in on the first game and tried to win it for sure. I think as it wore on, and certainly after our second goal, we were much more. We had two players that had been carded. We took them off, and so we were more cognizant of that as the game wore on. But there was no point in the preparation where we said, "All right, we're gonna." Only play these guys for a certain amount. So we went after the game as much as we could, and but then made decisions as it went on. So for the last 20 minutes, we had different players in, but because we have a 24-man roster, we changed things a little bit, and there were some players that came on that we knew had worked really hard that would provide some help defensively that maybe aren't as sharp on the ball. And once we got the lead, we were able to play those players a little bit more, and they gave us a huge lift. So that was one of the pieces that I was most surprised and happy about, really.
Well, one of the most exciting things about a tournament run like this is that your players are going to really build from this. They're going to grow from this. And so I know, did you come out of this weekend in full strength going into Johns Hopkins, I believe? And do you have a lot of young players that really are learning a lot from this tournament run?
Yeah. So the interesting part about this weekend is we have 4 coaches on staff. 2 of us had the flu starting Thursday, and probably close to half the team was in pretty bad shape. And so, that was one of these things. I think our assistant coach sent a couple of the players the Jordan flu game just to say, like, you can do it. And so we got together last night we did some yoga, and we probably we barely had half the team. And so usually you have, I pulled my hamstring or I have an ankle and I'm out, and we're healthy in that regard. But this bug that's going around, we're hoping to get that through that so we can start to focus on Johns Hopkins this weekend, because we certainly need everybody healthy. But at this point, guys are playing with it, so it seems like they can manage it. And we'll see. I mean, we'll practice tonight. I would assume we'll still have some players that are out, but if they need to be out so that they're ready on Saturday at this point in the season, I'm certainly fine with it.
Yeah, I'd prefer recovering from the flu than an ankle or a knee any day of the week, even though I'm not diminishing your challenge there. But
I agree.
Yeah. Well, what about Johns Hopkins? I know they're a great program. What do you know about them, and what are some of the keys to victory this week?
So we actually we scrimmage them every year, and did again this year. And they're a unique team. They're really well coached. I think the best way to sort of describe them is, it's almost like playing against a team of central midfielders. They can all handle the ball, and they do really well. So they want to spread you out. And I talked about it earlier. They want to control the tempo, and that's something that is interesting, because how you approach it is always, all right, well, do you come out and just go all in, or, do you stay low? And if you stay low, how low? And so it's one of those things where we've been watching a lot of film and saying like, well, this seemed like it worked, and but they can beat you in a lot of different ways. And so from that standpoint, I think we just have to be, we have to be ready. But the other thing is, at this point in the season, with 3 days to prepare, we're not going to change tremendously what we've been doing, and I wouldn't assume that they're going to change tremendously what they've been doing. And so, I think it's a great opportunity for us. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for them as well. So I would expect it's going to be a pretty good game.
I also think this is great. All these local teams that have advanced, including Navy and Georgetown, there are a lot of teams that are still dancing. That's got to be great for local soccer.
It's just good. It's such a good buzz. It's such a good buzz for everyone, and we're really good friends with the Georgetown staff, and so to just send text messages back and forth, and with people playing, and so it stays on everyone's radar. So yeah, it's tremendous. And I was looking, in preparation for this, and saw Marymount and Mary Washington and Christchurch, Newport, and Lynchburg, and all these teams that are playing. And so yeah, I think it helps, and hopefully it'll help us keep a lot of this talent within the region, and we can keep doing this because it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, Coach, this has been a lot of fun too. I appreciate your time. You've done a great job. Great guy, I could tell. And I really wish you luck this week. I hope it goes your way. And hopefully we can talk on another one of these sometime soon.
Yeah, I'd love it. No, I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much.
No, it was great, Coach. And best of luck again. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Yeah.